Kai sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his tired eyes. The space colony he lived on was quiet tonight, just the usual hum of machines and distant chatter. He had just returned from his work in the colony's central hub, a long day spent sorting through digital files and conducting research. It was the same routine every day, but today he was looking forward to a few hours of peace. The walls of his small room were covered with old, faded posters of Earth, reminders of a place he hadn't seen in years. He missed the planet's warmth, the green fields, and the crowded streets. But that was all behind him now. The colony on this distant world had become his new home, and though he had made some friends, the loneliness sometimes felt unbearable. Kai was just about to sit back and lose himself in a book when a strange sound came from the doorway. It was a soft whoosh, like the air moving quickly. He didn't pay much attention at first. The colony's doors often made strange noises, but then he heard it again, louder this time. He turned around, his eyes wide with confusion. The door to his room slid open, and standing in the doorway was an alien. Kai's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't human. Her skin shimmered a bright, glowing teal, and her long hair was a mix of silver and violet, cascading over her shoulders. Her eyes were like nothing he had ever seen before, large, almost luminous, with no pupils, just smooth, shining surfaces that seemed to take in everything at once. Kai blinked, not sure if he was seeing things. His mind raced for an explanation. Was this some kind of new colony experiment? Maybe some new species they were studying. But then the alien spoke. "Can I sleep next to you tonight, human?" Her voice was soft, almost innocent, and it sounded almost like a question, but it carried a certain weight behind it. Kai's mouth went dry. He didn't know how to respond. Was this a joke? A prank from one of his friends? Or was this something more serious? The alien didn't seem to notice his shock. She stepped inside the room, her bare feet making no sound as she crossed the floor. Her eyes seemed to be studying him intently, but not in a threatening way. It was as if she was simply trying to understand him, as though she had never encountered a human before. Maybe she hadn't. Kai stammered, still trying to process what was happening. What? What do you mean? Why would you want to? I come from a place where we do not understand the concept of personal space the way you do, the alien explained, tilting her head slightly, as if the idea of space between people was completely foreign to her. In my culture, we sleep near others to bond, to understand each other better. Kai was still trying to make sense of it. His brain was struggling to catch up with the situation. An alien, in his room, asking to sleep next to him. But why here? Why me? Kai asked, his voice unsure. The alien gave him a gentle smile, her teeth sharp but not threatening. You are a human. I have heard that humans are capable of deep connections. You are not like the others I have met. I feel something. A connection. She took a small step closer. Is it strange for you? Kai shook his head, trying to clear the fog in his mind. This was insane. His hands were shaking, and his thoughts were a tangled mess. He didn't know whether to be afraid, confused, or curious. Well, I don't know, he said, still unsure. I'm not really used to this kind of thing. The alien, who introduced herself as Zara, seemed to understand. I do not wish to disturb you, she said, her voice softening. But I need your help. I am far from my home. I don't understand your ways, but I trust you. If it is all right, I would like to stay here tonight, just to sleep. Nothing more. Zora's words were sincere, and there was something about her calm demeanor that made Kai pause. She didn't seem threatening at all. In fact, she seemed more like a lost traveler than anything else. A part of him wanted to help her, to ease her confusion, but another part of him was uncomfortable with the idea of sharing his space so suddenly, especially with someone so different. I don't know, Kai said again, his voice quieter now. This is all just so sudden. I don't even know where you came from. Zora's eyes softened, and she took a step back. "I am sorry," she said, her voice genuine. "I did not mean to overwhelm you. I will go if you wish." She turned toward the door, and for a moment, Kai wondered if he should let her leave. But something about her presence made him hesitate. She looked lonely, lost even. A part of him couldn't bear to send her away, especially when she had no place to go. "Wait," Kai called out before he could think. "You can stay, for tonight. But just for tonight, okay?" Zara turned around, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, human. You are kind." She made her way to the edge of his bed and sat down, her presence calm and serene. Kai sat on his own side, still processing what had just happened. The room, which had once felt like a safe, quiet place, now felt different, charged with an energy he couldn't quite explain. As the silence stretched on, Kai realized that his evening was anything but ordinary. He had no idea what had just begun, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the start of something much bigger than either of them could understand. Kai sat on the edge of his bed, staring at Zara, who was quietly sitting at the far end of the room. He couldn't believe what had just happened. An alien had just walked into his room and asked to sleep next to him. He had no idea what to do or what this meant. Her request felt strange, and yet there was something about Zara that made him feel a little more at ease. Zara sat with her hands in her lap, her bright teal skin glowing faintly in the dim light. She didn't seem uncomfortable, but Kai could tell she was waiting for him to speak. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words just wouldn't come. His mind was still trying to process everything. Finally, after a long silence, Kai spoke. "So, you really don't understand the concept of personal space, huh?" he asked, unsure if he was even asking the right question. Zara nodded slowly, her eyes watching him closely. "No, not like you do. Where I come from, we do not have the same boundaries as humans. We are all connected in a way that you may not understand." She paused for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "When we sleep near others, it helps us understand them better. We feel their emotions, their thoughts. It is how we bond." Kai frowned, trying to wrap his mind around it. He had never heard of anything like this before. In his world, personal space was everything. He was used to people keeping their distance, to having his own space to think and relax. But Zara was telling him that her people had no such boundaries. It was difficult to imagine. "So when you say bond," Kai asked slowly, "you mean, like you can feel what I'm feeling?" Zara nodded again. "Yes, it is how we communicate without words. Through touch, through proximity. We share a connection that way." She seemed almost excited, as if this was something she had been waiting to explain. "But it's not just feelings. We can learn about each other's lives, their memories, their experiences. It helps us understand each other deeply." Kai blinked. That was a lot to take in. He didn't know if he liked the idea of someone being able to feel his thoughts and emotions. There were things in his past he wasn't ready to share, things he had kept hidden for a long time. The idea of someone reading his mind without him being able to stop it made him nervous. "But don't you think that's too much?" he asked. "I mean, sharing everything like that. It sounds kind of, I don't know, invasive." Zora's expression softened. "I understand your concern, human," she said gently. "But for us, it is not invasive. It is a way to connect, to truly know another being, to become part of each other's lives in a way that is meaningful." Kai took a deep breath, trying to understand. He had to admit, there was something appealing about the idea of being so connected to another person. But it also felt overwhelming. Could he trust Zara? Could he allow someone, especially an alien, to know him so deeply? He shifted uncomfortably on his bed. "So if I let you stay here tonight, you'll be able to, what? Feel everything I feel? Every thought, every memory?" Zara nodded. "Yes, but only if you allow me. If you do not wish to share, I will respect that. But I can help you understand yourself in ways you might not expect." She smiled softly. "You may find it comforting. Kai hesitated. He didn't know what to say. On one hand, he was curious about this connection she was talking about. But on the other hand, he wasn't sure he was ready to share that much of himself. He had spent so many years keeping things to himself, hiding his pain and his fears. The idea of someone, especially someone he barely knew, being able to see all of that was frightening. "I don't know," Kai muttered, shaking his head. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all that." Zora tilted her head, as though she understood his hesitation. "It is not something you have to decide right now. Just let me stay with you for tonight. We do not have to share everything immediately. But if you are open to it, I can help you. I can show you how our bond works." Kai thought for a moment, looking at Zora. She wasn't pressuring him, and she didn't seem to expect anything from him. She just seemed calm, almost peaceful. He had always struggled with feeling alone, with feeling disconnected from the people around him. Maybe this was an opportunity to understand something more, something deeper. "Okay," Kai said finally, his voice quiet. "I'll let you stay, but I need time. I'm not ready to share everything just yet." Zora's face brightened with a soft smile. "Thank you, human," she said warmly. "You do not have to rush. We can take it slow. Just being near you tonight is enough for me." Kai nodded, feeling a little more at ease. It still felt strange, but something about Zora's presence made him feel a bit more comfortable. Maybe it was because she wasn't pushing him. She seemed to understand that he needed time to adjust. As the night went on, Kai and Zora sat in silence, the hum of the colony's machinery in the background. Zora never once tried to invade his thoughts or make him feel uncomfortable. Instead, she sat quietly, her eyes sometimes meeting his, her calm demeanor making the room feel a little less lonely. Kai didn't fully understand what Zora was offering, but as he lay down to sleep, he realized he wasn't as afraid as he had been before. Maybe, just maybe, this connection was something worth exploring. The night passed quietly, but Kai couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Zora was still in his room, sitting at the edge of his bed, watching him with those bright, glowing eyes. It wasn't just her appearance that was strange. Her presence was different. There was an energy in the air, something Kai couldn't quite explain. It was as if Zora was always aware of what he was feeling, even when he didn't say anything. Kai couldn't sleep. His mind was racing with questions, but he didn't know how to ask them. Zora had explained a little about her people, the Velari, and how they communicated through physical closeness. But Kai still didn't fully understand. He had grown up in a world where personal space was important, where people kept their distance. The idea of being connected so closely to another person, especially an alien, was overwhelming. Finally, unable to sleep, Kai sat up in his bed and turned to face Zora. She was still sitting there, her knees drawn up to her chest, her arms wrapped around her legs. She seemed relaxed, almost peaceful. Kai, on the other hand, felt like he was on edge. "Zora," he began, his voice uncertain. "I don't really get it. What do you mean by bonding? I don't know if I'm ready for this. It feels weird." Zora looked at him, her face gentle. She didn't seem offended by his words. Instead, she nodded slowly, as though she understood his hesitation. "I know this is difficult for you, human. Your world is different, but for us, this is normal. We do not see distance the same way you do." Kai frowned, still not sure what she meant. "But you can feel what I feel, right? Everything I'm thinking." Zora nodded, her expression serious now. "Yes, but only if you allow me to. I will not invade your thoughts unless you want me to. I respect your boundaries, but if you let me, I can help you understand yourself better." Kai thought about this for a moment. The idea of Zora feeling his thoughts, knowing his fears and his past, still made him uncomfortable. He had always kept things to himself, his painful memories, his loneliness, his mistakes. It wasn't easy to share those parts of himself with anyone. But there was something in Zora's eyes that made him wonder if she could help him in ways he hadn't imagined. "What do you mean, understand myself better?" Kai asked, his voice softer now. Zara's eyes glowed slightly as she spoke. You have much inside you, human. Your emotions are strong, and sometimes they confuse you. You do not always know what you feel, but I can help you see it. I can show you the things you have hidden away. Kai felt a chill run down his spine. There were so many things he had kept hidden, so many things he didn't want to face. His childhood, the loss of his family, the loneliness he had carried for so long. These were things he didn't want anyone to see. The thought of Zara, or anyone, discovering these parts of him made him want to retreat. I don't know if I can do that, Kai said, shaking his head. I've never let anyone in like that before. It's too much. Zara didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at him with a kind of understanding that made his heart beat a little faster. She didn't seem to be judging him. She simply watched him, her gaze steady. It is okay to be afraid, Zara said finally, her voice calm. But you are not alone. You are human, and that is enough. Kai wasn't sure how to respond to that. There was something in her words that made him feel seen, in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. It was strange, but it also felt comforting. Maybe Zara was right. Maybe he didn't need to carry everything alone. Just then, as Kai was about to speak again, he felt a sudden shift in the air around him. It was as if something had changed, something he couldn't explain. He turned to look at Zara, but she wasn't looking at him anymore. Her eyes were focused on something else, something invisible in the air between them. Zara? Kai asked, his voice rising with concern. Zara's expression had changed. Her calm demeanor was replaced by something else, a kind of quiet intensity. She slowly reached out a hand toward him, her fingers glowing faintly. Kai felt a strange warmth spread through the room, a warmth that seemed to come from her touch, even though she hadn't physically touched him yet. I am going to show you something, Zara said softly. If you are ready. Kai felt his heart race. Was this it? Was she about to invade his mind, to see everything he had buried for so long? But then something in Zara's eyes told him that this wasn't an attack. This wasn't about breaking into his mind. This was something different, something she truly believed would help him. Kai nodded slowly, unsure of what would happen next, but trusting her for some reason he couldn't explain. With a gentle motion, Zara's fingers brushed against the air between them. The warmth seemed to intensify, and Kai suddenly felt something shift inside him. It was as if a door had opened in his mind, and memories, feelings, emotions, all of them, came flooding through him. At first, it was overwhelming. Flashbacks of his childhood, the day he lost his family, the day he had been sent to the colony, the emptiness he had felt ever since, flashed before his eyes. He could feel the sadness, the fear, the loneliness. He could almost taste the bitter feeling of abandonment. But then, just as quickly, Zara's presence settled beside him, a calming influence. Her warmth spread through his thoughts, wrapping around the painful memories, soothing them, offering comfort in a way he hadn't felt in years. You are not alone, Zara whispered in his mind. You never have been. For the first time in a long while, Kai felt the weight of his past begin to lift. Maybe this connection wasn't so scary after all. The room was silent, the only sound being the soft hum of the colony's machinery in the distance. Kai sat still, feeling the weight of everything he had just experienced. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Zara had opened something inside him, something that had been locked away for years. The memories, the emotions, everything had come rushing to the surface. But the strangest part was how he felt afterward. It wasn't as if Zara had stolen his thoughts or invaded his privacy. It was more like she had helped him see things more clearly, like someone had turned on a light in a dark room. For the first time in a long while, Kai didn't feel so alone. Zara was still sitting beside him, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. She hadn't said a word since the connection. She just waited, her calm presence filling the room. Kai didn't know what to say. He had so many questions, but none of them seemed important anymore. He was still trying to understand what had just happened. "I didn't expect that," Kai said finally, his voice quiet. Zara looked at him, her face serene. "You are not the only one who was surprised," she said, "but you allowed me to see you, to feel what you have hidden inside." Kai nodded, unsure of how to respond. His mind was still full of the images, the emotions, the fear, the loneliness, the pain. It was all there, but it didn't feel as heavy now. Zara's presence had made it easier to face. "I've been hiding those memories for so long," Kai said, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't want anyone to know about them. But you didn't judge me." Zora's eyes softened, and she reached out, gently touching his arm. "You do not need to hide from me. I understand your pain. I have felt it too." Kai looked at her, surprised. "You've felt it, but you're not human. You don't have the same experiences." Zara shook her head. "No, I am not human. But I have my own pain, my own struggles. We all do. That is what makes us connected. We may be different in many ways, but the emotions we feel are the same. We all know loss. We all know fear." Kai looked down at his hands, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always felt so separate from everyone else, like his pain was something no one could understand. But Zara was showing him that maybe that wasn't true. Maybe there were more people, more beings, who understood him than he realized. "But it's different for me," Kai said quietly. "I don't know how to move on. I don't know how to stop feeling lost." Zora didn't speak for a moment. She just sat there, her presence steady, like a rock in the middle of a storm. Kai didn't know why, but he found it comforting. "It is not easy to move on," Zara said softly. "But you do not have to do it alone. I will help you, if you let me." Kai glanced up at her, his heart heavy with doubt. Could he really let someone else in? Could he truly trust Zara with everything he had been hiding? "I don't know if I'm ready," Kai said, his voice thick with uncertainty. "I've kept everything locked away for so long. It's hard to just let it all out." Zara's eyes met his, and for the first time, Kai saw a hint of something deeper in her gaze. It wasn't just understanding, it was empathy. She knew what it was like to struggle, to carry burdens that felt too heavy to bear. "You do not have to let it all out at once," Zara said. "We will take it one step at a time. But you must be willing to trust me. Only then can you begin to heal." Kai sat back, feeling the weight of her words. Trust. It was a word he had never thought much about. He had always been on his own, always believed that trusting someone would only lead to disappointment. But Zara wasn't like anyone he had ever met. She was an alien, yes, but there was something in her that made him feel safe, something in her presence that made him want to believe in what she was offering. "I want to try," Kai said finally, his voice steady. "I want to believe that I can move on, but I'm scared." Zara nodded. "Fear is a part of the process. It is okay to be scared, but you do not have to face it alone." She reached out, her hand hovering just above his. Kai looked at it, unsure at first, but then, with a deep breath, he extended his hand toward hers. When their fingers touched, a warmth spread through him, like a gentle wave that washed over his entire body. The connection was deeper now, more than just a physical touch. It was as if they were linked, their emotions and thoughts flowing between them in a way that felt both unfamiliar and comforting at the same time. Kai's heart raced as he felt Zara's calm presence beside him, the bond between them growing stronger. For the first time, he didn't feel so alone. He felt like he could breathe again, like he didn't have to carry his burdens by himself. "I'm ready," Kai whispered, more to himself than to Zara. "I'm ready to let go of the past." Zara smiled softly. "You are stronger than you know, human. You are ready for this." Kai took another deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he could face it. With Zara by his side, he no longer felt lost. For the first time, He allowed himself to believe that healing was possible. The next morning, the sun's rays filtered through the small window of Kai's room, casting a soft glow over everything. Kai slowly opened his eyes, the events of the previous night still fresh in his mind. He could feel the warmth of Zara's presence beside him, even though she was now sitting a few feet away, silently watching him. For a moment, Kai wasn't sure if everything had been a dream. Had the bond, the connection, really happened? Had he truly let Zara into his mind, or was it all just some strange, vivid imagination? But as he looked over at her, he saw the quiet, calm expression on her face, and he knew it had been real. What they shared was real. Zara smiled gently when she saw that Kai had woken up. "Good morning, human," she said softly, her voice warm. Kai sat up in his bed, stretching his arms above his head. The feeling of peace that had washed over him the night before still lingered in his chest. It was as though a weight had been lifted, but there was still so much to process. "Good morning," Kai replied, his voice still a little hoarse from the night's emotions. I'm still trying to understand everything that happened." Zara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "It is not easy to accept such a deep connection so quickly, but you allowed me to help you. That is a big step." Kai let out a breath, feeling both grateful and unsure. "I never thought I would feel like this. It's like, I don't know, like I'm not carrying all of that pain anymore. But at the same time, I'm still unsure about everything." Zara stood up, moving closer to him. Her presence was gentle, like the calm after a storm. "It is normal to feel confused. You have faced something difficult. But you are not alone in it now." Kai nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something missing. As much as he wanted to believe that things could get better, a part of him was still hesitant. His past had shaped who he was, and he wasn't sure if he could ever truly let go of the old pain. "I'm just scared, Zara," Kai admitted, his voice quiet. "I don't know if I can fully let go. What if I lose myself in all of this? What if I can't handle what's coming next?" Zara looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening. "It is not about losing yourself, Kai. It is about discovering who you truly are, without the weight of your past holding you down. You do not have to forget what you've been through, but you can choose how it shapes you moving forward." Kai's eyes filled with uncertainty. He had always tried to control his life, to keep things in order, but now it felt like everything was slipping away, like the old boundaries were fading and a new path was unfolding, one that he wasn't sure he was ready for. "But how do I do that?" Kai asked. "How do I move forward when everything I've known feels like it's falling apart?" Zara smiled gently and sat next to him. "You do not have to have all the answers right now. You only need to take the next step. You have already started. You allowed me into your heart, and that is enough for today." Kai looked at her, still unsure but comforted by her words. The bond between them was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just a simple connection. It was a deep understanding, an unspoken language that transcended words. And even though Kai was still uncertain about what it all meant, there was something in him that felt lighter. "You make it sound so simple," Kai said with a small smile. "But I don't think it's going to be that easy. I've been running from my past for so long. I don't know if I can just leave it behind." Zara's expression turned serious, her voice steady. "It will not be easy. Healing never is. But you have already shown great strength by allowing yourself to feel what you've been avoiding. That is the first step. The rest will come in time." Kai looked at her, feeling both comforted and overwhelmed. She was right. In a way, he had already taken a step, one that he hadn't expected to take. And somehow, Zara had made it feel possible. "I guess I'll have to take it one day at a time, huh?" Kai said, his voice uncertain but filled with a small glimmer of hope. Zara nodded, her smile warm. "Yes, one step at a time. And you do not have to take them alone." Kai took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision ahead of him. He knew it wouldn't be easy, But something about Zora's words, her presence, made him believe that maybe, just maybe, he could face what came next. Maybe he didn't have to carry the weight of the past anymore. Maybe it was time to move forward. As Kai stood up from his bed, he felt a sense of determination building inside him. It was small, but it was there. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he wasn't going to face it alone. Zora had opened a door for him, one he had been too afraid to open on his own. And now, for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to take that first step into whatever came next. Zora stood beside him, her presence calm and reassuring. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Kai nodded, his heart a little lighter. "I think I am." And for the first time, Kai felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was ready to live again. The days that followed felt strange to Kai. It wasn't just that his life had changed overnight, but that it had changed in a way he hadn't expected. He was used to being on his own, to keeping his emotions in check, to hiding the parts of him that hurt. But now, with Zora by his side, it was as if everything had been turned upside down. Kai had started to notice things he hadn't before. His feelings weren't as confusing anymore. It was like Zora had unlocked a part of him. And now he could understand what he was feeling. Fear, hope, uncertainty, but also something new, a growing sense of connection. Zora didn't push him to share everything all at once. She simply stayed by him, offering her presence whenever he needed it. Sometimes she would sit quietly with him. Other times she would speak to him, guiding him through his emotions with calm words. And always, she made him feel like he wasn't alone. But even though he felt this strange comfort in her presence, there were still moments when Kai found himself wondering, what if I'm not strong enough? What if I can't really move on? It was one of those moments that found him sitting alone in the small courtyard of the colony, watching the stars twinkle above. The night sky was vast and endless, just like the future he had no idea how to navigate. The quiet around him felt peaceful, but his mind was anything but. Zora appeared beside him, her figure almost glowing in the dark. She didn't say anything at first, but Kai knew she was waiting for him to speak. He wasn't sure what to say, but the silence felt heavier than before. "I'm scared," Kai said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if I can't do this? What if I can't face what's ahead?" Zora sat beside him, her presence calm and steady. "You are not meant to face it alone," she replied softly. "You have already shown great courage by confronting your past. The future is uncertain, yes, but that does not mean you must walk it by yourself." Kai looked at her, unsure of how to explain the doubt gnawing at his mind. "But I've always been alone. I've had to handle everything myself. And now, I don't know what's next." Zora smiled gently, her gaze steady. "That is the fear you must face, Kai. The fear of the unknown. But it is not as powerful as you think. You have the strength within you to face it. It will not be easy, but you have already begun the journey." Kai wanted to believe her, but something inside him still felt lost. The past had shaped him into someone who didn't know how to let go. He had always been afraid of change, afraid of stepping into a future that felt too uncertain. But as he sat there with Zora, he realized that maybe it wasn't about having all the answers right now. Maybe it was enough to just take one small step at a time. "I'm not sure I can trust myself," Kai admitted, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can handle what's ahead." Zora turned to face him, her eyes soft with understanding. "You do not have to have all the answers, Kai. Trust yourself, step by step. It is not about knowing everything at once. It is about moving forward, even when the way is unclear." For a moment, Kai was silent, thinking about her words. Could he really trust himself? Could he really face what was ahead? He wasn't sure, but somehow, Zora's calm presence made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could try. "I guess I can try," Kai said, a small sense of determination beginning to form inside him. "One step at a time, right?" Zora nodded, her smile warm and encouraging. "Yes, one step at a time. And remember, you are not alone in this. I will be here, guiding you, whenever you need me." As they sat together in the quiet night, Kai found himself breathing a little easier. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he was beginning to realize that it wasn't about having all the answers. It was about being willing to face it, step by step, even if it was uncertain. The next few days passed quickly. Kai found himself spending more time with Zara, talking about his fears and his past. Sometimes he even found himself smiling, something he hadn't done in a long time. Zara was patient with him, letting him go at his own pace, and for the first time in a while, Kai felt like he was moving forward. One afternoon, as they sat in a quiet corner of the colony, Zara turned to him with a thoughtful look in her eyes. "You have made great progress, Kai," she said. "I can see that you are beginning to understand yourself more, but there is one more thing I want to ask of you." Kai looked at her, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" Zara hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I want you to think about what comes next. You've faced your past, and you've learned to understand your feelings. But the future will require more from you. It will ask you to be brave, to take risks, to trust others. Are you ready for that?" Kai felt a knot form in his stomach. The thought of facing the future, of taking risks, filled him with fear. He wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of challenge. But as he looked into Zara's calm, reassuring eyes, he felt a spark of hope ignite inside him. "I don't know if I'm ready," Kai admitted, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But I know I have to try." Zara nodded, her smile proud. "That is all I ask of you. To try." As they sat there together, Kai realized that the journey ahead would be difficult, but it wouldn't be impossible. There would be moments of doubt, moments when he would want to give up. But with Zara by his side, he knew he wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, he could face the unknown after all. The days had turned into weeks, and the feeling of change continued to grow within Kai. He wasn't the same person he had been when he first met Zara. The weight of his past was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Every conversation, every moment spent with her, had taught him something new about himself. And though there were still doubts, he no longer felt completely lost. It was a quiet evening, the stars beginning to fill the sky once again. Kai sat on a small bench in the colony's garden, staring up at the endless expanse of space. He thought about everything that had happened, about the pain he had carried for so long, and how little by little it had started to fade. It wasn't gone completely, but it wasn't as suffocating as it had once been. He could breathe again. Zara sat beside him, her usual calm presence filling the space between them. She had become more than just a guide. She had become a friend, someone who understood him in a way that no one else ever had. She didn't ask for him to be perfect. She didn't need him to have all the answers. She simply accepted him as he was. "Do you ever wonder what your future holds?" Kai asked softly, his gaze still fixed on the stars. Zara turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. "I do not know what the future holds, Kai. But I do know that it is shaped by the choices we make today." Kai smiled faintly, her words reminding him of the truth he had learned in their time together. It wasn't about knowing everything. It was about choosing to move forward, step by step. He had already chosen to trust her, to open himself up to healing. And now he had to choose again, to face whatever came next. "I used to think that the future was something to fear," Kai said, his voice quiet. "I used to think that if I didn't control everything, it would slip away from me. But now I realize that I don't have to have control. I just need to trust." Zara smiled, a soft and knowing smile. "That is the first step toward true freedom." Kai looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. He had spent so much of his life trying to control things, trying to hold on to the past. But now, for the first time, he understood that true strength didn't come from control. It came from trust. Trust in himself, trust in others, and trust in the unknown. "I'm still scared," Kai admitted, his voice quiet but steady. "But I know I have to keep moving forward." Zara nodded, her gaze unwavering. "It is okay to be scared. Fear is a natural part of life, but it does not have to stop you. It is only a feeling, and it does not define you." Kai felt a sense of peace settle over him. It wasn't that his fear had disappeared, but it no longer felt like an obstacle. Fear could exist, but it didn't have to control him. He had learned to embrace it, to acknowledge it, and to move through it. And now, with Zora's words in his mind, he felt ready for whatever came next. The moment felt still, like the calm before a storm. But Kai no longer feared the storm. He knew that it was just a part of the journey. "I've learned a lot from you, Zara," Kai said, turning to face her. "You've shown me that it's okay to let go of the past, that it's okay to trust others. I don't know what the future holds, but I think I'm ready to face it." Zora's expression softened, and for a moment, her eyes seemed to shine with something more than just understanding. It was pride. Pride in him. "You have already faced so much, Kai. You have come so far. And you will continue to grow, as long as you remain open to the journey." Kai took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift off his chest. He wasn't sure where the path ahead would lead him. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he had to have all the answers. He didn't need to control everything. He just needed to trust the process and take it one step at a time. "I'm ready," Kai said softly, almost to himself. "I'm ready to move forward." Zora smiled, her face calm and reassuring. "Then let us begin." The words were simple, but they carried so much meaning. Kai felt the truth of them deep within his heart. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. As the stars twinkled above them, Kai stood up, feeling a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the kind of peace that meant everything was perfect. It was the kind of peace that came from accepting the unknown, from trusting that everything would work out, step by step. Zara stood beside him, her presence as steady as ever. "The future is waiting for you, Kai," she said softly. And for the first time, Kai believed her. The future didn't have to be something to fear. It could be something to embrace. As long as he kept moving forward, as long as he kept trusting, he knew that he would be okay. With Zora by his side, he didn't feel so alone anymore. The journey ahead might be uncertain, but at least he knew he wasn't facing it alone. And that, more than anything, gave him the strength to face whatever came next. The stars above shone brightly, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of possibilities. And with each step Kai took, he felt a little closer to discovering his place within it.